CES 2023 is going on right now, and there's some pretty cool things that have been announced. Now, one of my favorite things that were announced was the new Alienware M18, powered by Intel's Raptor Lake Mobile and NVIDIA's Lovelace mobile chips. Now, before we get into that, I do want to actually talk about Intel and NVIDIA's new products, starting with Intel's Raptor Lake CPUs. Now, as you can see, there's new chips for laptops, and honestly, the H series isn't really impressive. It's the HX where things are different this year. If you look at the H series here, you can see that we have 14 cores, just like last year at the high end. However, looking at the HX, as you can see, we now have 24 cores on a laptop. That is the same as the desktop version of the chip. And last year there were 16 cores, so we got a pretty big boost here in multi-core performance. Now, these are some slides here from Intel that you guys can take a look at, pause and read, but we're not going to go over this. Now, what's really interesting here is the 13980HX and the 13900HX are pretty much the same CPU, honestly. The main difference here is that the clock speeds are just a tiny bit higher. So when you are purchasing laptops with these chips, if the price difference is significant between these two, it might be a good idea just to get that 13900HX because you're not going to really see the performance difference. I'm not entirely sure if either chip is unlocked. We'll hopefully find that out soon. But if they are, then it wouldn't even matter because you can overclock. Now, here are some benchmarks by Intel. Now, as you can see, these are their benchmarks, and we're not going to really go over these too much because they can, take them with a grain of salt. It's Intel's benchmarks. But what I do have for you guys is this Geekbench score here. Now, this is the 13900K from a desktop. This is the official Geekbench score. And if you look at this picture, these are various 13980HXs that were tested in December. So this is pretty similar to what you're probably going to see at the end. And as you can see, the single core performance is about 4% away from the desktop CPU. That's pretty impressive. Multi-core is not as close, but considering that the desktop CPUs can take over 250 watts of power, and these laptops are going to be limited to a peak of around 157, that's actually pretty good. It's pretty efficient. Now, that's the whole Intel thing. Let's go over NVIDIA because they now announced a 4090 mobile. So let's take a look at this. Alright, as you can see from this chart, the 4090 mobile isn't really a 4090 mobile, it's more of a 4080. Now the specs are actually pretty similar to the 4080. It has the same amount of cores, same VRAM. The only difference is the clock speeds are reduced by a decent amount. Now, as you can see, there are various TDPs, and a little birdie told me that the 175 watt 4090 mobile is going to be able to match, if not beat, a 3090 Ti. Now, that's quite impressive, in my opinion. It's very close to the 4080. It's able to beat the 3090 Ti potentially. We'll see when the final specs and, not specs, but when the final products are launched. But apparently the highest end laptops that have the highest TDP 4090 mobile should be able to beat a 3090 Ti. Now the next one is the 4080 mobile. Now looking at the specs of this is basically a 4070 Ti desktop GPU with less cores and downclocked. So again, NVIDIA is doing this thing where the actual number doesn't really tell you the desktop equivalent performance anymore. This kind of started with the 30 series. With the 10 and 20 series, a 1080 mobile was very close to a 1080 desktop GPU, assuming that you had the higher TDP model. Same with the 20 series. The 2080 in my Alienware X14 R1 is actually as powerful as a 2080 desktop. However, with 3080s, you don't have the same core counts. With the 4090, it's the same thing. It's just, they went back to the old school where, like a 680M was actually a 670. So when you are looking to buy NVIDIA's new GPUs, do take that in mind because a 4090 mobile is not an actual 4090 mobile. It's a lot slower than you think, but it's still very fast, obviously, compared to previous generation because now we're going to be able to get 3090 Ti performance out of it. So one thing that we saw was this benchmark right here. As you can see, this model is actually matching pretty much, well, it's technically beating a 3090. And I was told that the 3090 Ti is going to be beaten by the 175 watt models in the high end. So again, this is very exciting news. The other three GPUs, as you can see here, are the 4070 mobile, the 4060 mobile, and the 4050 mobile. Unfortunately, while these GPUs are going to be faster than the previous generation 30 series, they're not as impressive. just looking at the specs alone. But we're going to have to wait and see until actual benchmarks come out from these laptop GPUs. Until then, we're not going to really know. So let's start moving on to some laptops actually that were announced, starting with some 18-inch laptops. Now, one of the most exciting things to me is the new M18 from Alienware. This is their 18-inch laptop, and as someone who actually owns the M18 XR2 and the even bigger Alienware 18, this is actually their last 18-inch laptop that they had released. I'm pretty excited for this, and Alienware is not the only one. Actually, Asus is releasing an 18-inch, Razer is releasing an 18-inch, Acer is releasing an 18-inch. I haven't heard anything from MSI regarding an 18-inch, although their Titan is still a 17-inch laptop, so maybe they're skipping it, unless I missed it. Let me know in the comments if I missed that somehow. But yeah, 18-inch laptops are making a comeback. Now, a couple of things to know about the M18. Looking at the spec sheet here, it actually has 2 SODIMM slots, not 4, 2. I know a couple media outlets were saying, oh, it has 4. But the thing is, you can't listen to the people that are standing out there at the booths because they might not even know what they're talking about. This is the official spec sheet. It has 2 SODIMM slots, which was kind of unfortunate because the Air 51M R1 and R2 had 4 slots. So kind of a downgrade there, but it is DDR5. There is SODIMM slots, so that's kind of nice. They also say that it supports up to 9 terabytes of storage. I'm not entirely sure if it has like maybe some of the super small 2230 slots and then some of the 2280 slots, but if they're all 2280 slots, we should be able to easily break 9 terabyte barrier. Another thing to note is there's 2 panels. There's the 18-inch Quad HD display and the 18-inch Full HD display. Now, one is 165 Hz and one is 480 Hz. So I do want to say that be sure to subscribe because I'm actually going to order the M18 as soon as it's available to order and go over it as a review and everything because I like 18-inch laptops and it's an Alienware, so I'll probably end up getting the Alienware over the other 2. I will take a look to see if their other ones are better. I did see one claiming a mini LED, I think. I'll check and let y'all know at the bottom which one that is. But yeah, it was pretty interesting. The other thing that I don't like about the M18 is the X16 that Alienware announced has a 6-speaker system. The M18 does not have anything said about the sound system. So I'm really hoping they did not skimp on the sound system because the last good speaker system that Alienware had was the 18-inch laptops. After that, every laptop they released had bad audio because there was no subwoofer. So it sounds tiny and just no bass, no low end. So we'll see how that goes. Speaking of the M series, there's also the M16, which is a smaller version of the M18. So this is how it looks, and of course here is the official spec sheet. So this spec sheet will tell you what it comes with. Now, all of these laptops are going to have the RTX 40 series. It says next gen because the spec sheet was probably released before. But what I will say is, it's interesting that there's also going to be AMD options. Now, most likely this is going to be Dragon Range X or Phoenix. We'll see which CPUs from AMD go in here. But for GPUs, don't expect AMD to be able to compete with NVIDIA's high end. Like the 4090 is probably going to be unrivaled. I'll be pretty surprised, honestly, if AMD is able to compete with the 4090 mobile. They should be able to match a 4080 mobile. That shouldn't be a problem for them. But yeah, it'll be very interesting to see what happens. Unfortunately, those options are coming out way later. Like second half of this year, I believe they said. But for the Intel and the NVIDIA options, you can see them in February. So we'll be able to order them in February most likely. The next thing I want to talk about is the X14, or should I say the X14 R2. Now, last year, Alienware released the X14 R1, which is what I have here. I got this on Black Friday for $12.99, and I could actually still return it, but I'm not going to return it, and here's why. Looking at the X14 spec sheet, as you can see, it's now running a 13600 CPU. This has a 12700, and it just kind of tells me that it's not going to have as good performance. If we look at the spec sheet here, as you can see, it seems kind of like a downgrade, honestly. The one good thing about the new X14 R2 is that it now has a Quad HD display, which is really nice. But again, I don't think it's going to be worth me like returning this and spending so much more money on it, because this is $12.99 for the second highest model. It just needs, the RAM is the only thing that's less on here. Whereas that one, it starts at $17.99, which is going to be kind of expensive. Another thing I wanted to mention about the M18 is the webcam is 720p. It's not 1080p like everyone is saying it is. It's actually 720. And it does support Windows Hello, but that is something to know. The X16, on the other hand, does have a 1080p webcam. Oh, and for you guys that do watch my channel on a regular basis, you probably know about MXM laptops, or laptops that can be upgraded. So all the 18-inch laptops you saw can be upgraded. The MXM cards on those are all RTX 3000s. This does have RTX 2070 Super, and this is the Clevo X170 SMG. Now, Clevo is coming out with the X370, and if you haven't seen it yet, there is a Geekbench score that was leaked, and it is running all BGA components. So basically what that means is this is the last Clevo you can get that has an MXM port. All future Clevos are now going to have BGA GPUs. MXM has pretty much officially finally died for the consumer gamer marketplace. Obviously, as I mentioned in my MXM video, if you haven't seen that yet, I do recommend watching it. You can buy MXM cards. There are companies out there such as PNY, AdLink, Athena that make these MXM modules for embedded solutions. But of course, as a notebook enthusiast, we got them working on our laptops. But yeah, that will be, from now on, the only way to get MXM upgradable laptops. There's no more MXM upgradable laptops, and this is now going to be the last of its kind. Unfortunate news, but that's the way the whole market is going. Well, that's going to be it for this CES video. If you're not subscribed, be sure to subscribe. And like I did mention, the M18, I'll be sure to buy that day one. I'll be the first customer if I can be. But yeah, hopefully there's more cool stuff that's announced as CES progresses. And if there is some other stuff that I think is mentionable, that's relevant to the channel, I'll make another video. But yeah, this is the main thing. I'm super excited for the new 13th generation Intel CPUs and the new NVIDIA 4000 mobile GPUs. So yeah. Hopefully there's some other cool things that come out, and if there are, I'll see you then, and if not, there's other videos that I'm still working on, so subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.